If your blood runs orange and blue, this is the pod for you. You're listening to Orange and Blue Bloods, hosted by EJ Stewart and Tommy Beer. Let's get to it, man.
And let's talk about that playoff matchup because the first round for the Knicks is set. Nets lost on Tuesday. Knicks secured the 5 seed. The Cavs got locked into the 4 seed after the Sixers won on Tuesday. Joel Embiid had his maybe MVP moment against the Celtics in that game. So then the Cavs were locked at 4, meaning Knicks, Cavs will play each other in round 1 of the Eastern Conference playoffs with game 1 beginning in Cleveland. So these two teams, like I said, they're like this is actually not like the Lancers or Starks. This is a different kind of comparing with two franchises that seem to be all connected. They're not. So what are they? Maybe I'm trying to think of some other, the Boltons and someone else. Who knows?
Rosencrantz and Montagues. Little.
There you go. Yeah, you get some Romeo and Juliet in there. Yeah, but it feels like these franchises are attached to the hip, especially since what happened over the summer where the Cavs swooped in to get Donovan Mitchell from the Jazz after a month of speculation that the Knicks were close to making a deal for Donovan Mitchell. That of course did not happen. The Knicks won the regular season matchup 3-1. New York won the last meeting over the Cavs on March 31st with Jalen Brunson dropping a career-high 48 points in Cleveland. So we'll have, 700 million ways to break down the series next week when the season wraps up. But we'll have a shorter conversation and maybe a more focused conversation today. I want to begin with one question. Which team do you think has more pressure coming into round 1? So I think that both teams come in with, a lot of pressure. I think both fan bases expecting them to win. So that always kind of ratchets it up. But 2, I think because of what happened this summer, it feels like the Cavs have to win because they made the move for the guy the Knicks were trying to get. So you think that gives you the leg up. Meanwhile, I think for a lot of people following the Knicks, it's the Knicks have to win because they can't have the embarrassment of the guy that they did not get being the difference and then being bounced out of the first round of the playoffs. So who do you think has more pressure coming into the series?
First, let me apologize to my English teachers. The Montagues and the Capulets is Romeo and Juliet. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern's Hamlet. So I apologize for my.
I heard Montagues and I just assumed that's definitely Romeo and Juliet. And I just took you totally at face value.
Me too. So I know if somebody would have called me out on it. I think it's on the Cavs. The Cavs went all in. They traded their first round picks. They pushed all their chips in the middle of the table to get Donovan Mitchell because they wanted to be a legit title contender. They have him under contract for 2 more years. This is not the end of the world if they took a very good step forward. Mitchell played at an all NBA level. They advanced to the playoffs. They have a top 4 seed behind arguably the 3 best teams or 3 of the 4 best teams in the NBA in the East. So it wasn't like they locked into the number 4 seed or I don't want to say the Knicks were lucky to get the 4 seed 2 years ago, but certainly didn't have the gravitas of the 4 seed this season. They had they had
and it was a shortened season. They didn't play 82 games.
100%. So the Cavs have to be very happy with how the regular season turned out. If you asked for them to sign up for the 4 seed, they probably would have done it. But they liked the top seed or the top 3 seeds, of course. But given how everything adjusted to adding Donovan Mitchell, he dealt with some injuries here and there. They've got to the end of the regular season as a 4 seed. If they were to lose in the first round, that's a disappointing season for them. It's a disappointing season for Donovan Mitchell, coming off on the heels of the extremely disappointing end to his Utah career. We saw how that played out, and to lose it to Jalen Brunson and his family and friends from New York, he wouldn't hear the end of it. So I think there's more pressure on the Cavs. Obviously, the Knicks greatly exceeded expectations, as much so as any team in the NBA, not named Sacramento Kings. I think this season you could argue that they exceeded expectations to an extreme amount. Even Jalen Brunson stands are shocked at how well he's played, and Randall Bounce. We've talked about on the pod all the things that had to go well. Check. Nearly every box got checked off. Outside of potentially RJ Barrett not living up to what fans had hoped he would develop the season. And even in a down year, he's at 19 plus points a game. That being said, I would say if the Knicks were playing, it's funny. If the Knicks were the 6th seed and playing the Sixers, or the 7th seed and playing the Celtics, you'd almost say they're playing with house money to a certain extent. The fact that they're playing the Cavs, and even if they were the 6th seed or 7th seed and playing the Cavs, who were 2 or 3, there's the pressure gets amped up because of you're going to hear Stephen A. Smith for the next 2 weeks say, "I'll never set foot in the Garden," and there's
oh no, what would we do if Stephen A. Smith didn't step foot in the Garden?
and there's fun to be had there, but make no mistake, that is added pressure. You're playing against the guy you failed to get. We can argue whether that's a failure when 3 of the guys you didn't trade for each score 30-plus points, and you still have your draft capital, and you can still sign Donovan Mitchell in 2 years, and you can still use those draft picks and or some of those players whose value has now increased to get the next superstar that may be a little bit better suited to take your team to the next level of Donovan Mitchell. Is that a failure? You didn't complete the trade? All well and good, all conversations to be had. Make no mistake, there will be a narrative attached to the Knicks. LOL Knicks, they got beat by the guy they didn't have the stones to ante up for, and they get what they deserve, and now they're never going to be back in the playoffs because this is a tremendous setback they can't overcome. I don't buy into that. You don't buy into that. But it would be dishonest to say that narrative won't be out there and that the players aren't aware that they're playing Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah, I think so. I think narratively it is absolutely the Knicks because of all the things you just mentioned. I think there's a case to be made that even in reality, it's still the Knicks. And here's why I'll say that. Cleveland, I think a lot of people look at Cleveland as one of the teams that are next. One of the teams that in the next 2-3 years, they'll have a roster of younger players that have now grown up, developed, to their full potential or close to their full potential. Evan Mobley looks like he's going to be an all-NBA guy very soon. We know Darius Garland was an all-star last season, still putting up great numbers this season. Jared Allen, one of the top premier bigs in the NBA, particularly defensively. And then you got Donovan Mitchell for at least 2 seasons. I think there's a feeling that even if they don't somehow do it this year, it would be surprising, I think, if you came into it, wow, they got home field and didn't get out of the first round. That would be surprising to people, but the Eastern Conference was expected to be, especially towards the bottom half, a lot tougher than it ended up being. So I think I could see that result saying, okay, you're a year away. Let's see what happens next year. I think the reason why I'll say the Knicks have a little more pressure is because of those narratives, but also I think the pressure then goes on Leon Rose to say, okay, you now have to fix this roster. And not to say that it's broken per se. Clearly it's not. They won 47 games. They have a chance to win 49 games this season, almost 50. So it's not a broken roster. But I think if the fans go through what they went through in the Atlanta series, or even something not as painful, maybe it's a 6-game series loss, maybe it's even 7. I think there'll be pressure to say you have to do something. You cannot come into next season and say we're just running it back with essentially the same core. Maybe that would be fine. Like, to be honest, it wouldn't drive me crazy considering just how good these guys have played this season and how much we're continuing to see them improve. But I just don't think that it would be allowed. So I think that that's where the pressure comes in, because now you have to do a move. You have to make something happen. Maybe James Dolan is saying, hey, you have to make something happen. Like we saw what happened last time. We didn't do anything. We brought back the same old guys from the previous season. We got, our heads caved in 2022. They're not going to allow it to happen again. So that's where the pressure comes in, because then it's like, all right, well, you don't want to be forcing yourself to do something that ends up being more detrimental than what a Donovan Mitchell trade would have been had you given up your 3 or 4 unprotected firsts and IQ and RJ and Toppin or Quentin Grimes or whatever that would have been. That's where I think that pressure comes in. I think the front office then feels it. They can't afford to have, I mean, they may not have a choice. They lose. But I think that if they have a bad showing in this first round, that would be a tough pill to swallow.
I'll push back in this sense. If they get swept, all bets off, then, we have to reevaluate things. Assuming the series goes 6 games and they lose in game 6 at the Garden, that would sting. But, immediately aftermath, we got to change things. Take a deep breath, wait a week. We'll see. They lose it's close in the 4th quarter of game 7. 2 weeks after the season ends, Knicks fans and everybody will have a positive feeling about the season, I assume. Obviously, if they win, that changes things. But I would push back in this sense in terms of, let's say the Knicks lose in 5, which would be disappointing. Let's say they even if they lose let's say they lose in 6. I think this season has bought Leon Rose a fair amount of equity and some time.
I definitely agree with that.
You know, and you know, the question of whether to bring back Tibbs is not hanging over this team.
Yeah.
Sensible fans would recognize the practicality and the good sense of I shouldn't say all fans, but I would argue a majority of fans would recognize that bringing back this core and giving them another crack at it, and then if we need to readjust at next season's deadline, makes some sense. Makes a lot of sense, as opposed to, I think most fans recognize that the 2021 team, bringing that group back didn't make a lot of sense for the reasons we've talked about. So I think that there would be, I totally understand what you're saying in terms of New York ownership, pressure to tweak the thing if it's not immediately perfect right now, and allowing good to be the enemy of great. But I'm not sold on that, but I understand it. Let me just, the other thing argument I think could be made in terms of increased pressure on Cleveland. Donovan Mitchell has a player option for the final year of his contract. That's 2020, 25, 26. So yes, that's 3 years from now. They have him at least 2 more seasons. But that is, I don't want to say it's hanging over their head, but if you trade the Lauri Markkanen, all-star, Colin Sexton, contributing player, and 5 draft picks, 3 unprotected first and 2 swaps for a guy, and let's say you only have him for 3 years, and now they lose in the first round, so now you only have him for 2 more years. You know you still owe a pick in 2029, etc. That pending free agency is hanging over the head of the franchise. We know that Mitchell didn't demand the trade, but you know, was he happy to move on from Utah? Certainly.
It sounded like it. Yeah,
it sounded like it. Let's say he, God forbid, you know, has a serious ankle injury in December of next season and misses 2 months, and they fall to the 7th seed, and then they got to play the Bucks in round 1, now you're a year away, and now you're thinking, okay. We're confident we're going to sign Donovan Mitchell. He tells us he loves it here, but we lost to the Knicks a year ago. And now, you know, so does he want to join New York? Does he want to go home? Should we trade him? These are questions you at least have to ask yourself, because if you lose him in free agency, then your franchise is crippled. You know, I shouldn't say crippled. Again, they still have Garland and Allen.
Right. That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
And Mobley's locked
up.
So
they have a landing spot, but
they have a nice little floor where it's not devastating. They have enough good young players. But you don't want to trade 5 first-round picks for a guy and win 1 playoff series. Ask the Nets how they view their Kyrie Irving KD experience.
That is true.
You know, so I just think. If they don't win it this year, if they lose in the first round, 2 of all teams, the Knicks, who everyone is going to be talking about Donovan Mitchell, if he ever approaches free agency and he doesn't agree to an extension, the cap raising, you know, the new CBA where you can extend for 140% of your previous number, maybe that increases the likelihood he forgoes. You know, maybe they lock him into a long-term deal. Again, that's years down the line, but as we know, nothing is promised. You know, a lot of teams, listen, ask OKC Thunder fans. They were convinced, they lost in the first year. They made it to the finals, all the way to the finals, and they lost to the Heat. But listen, we're going to win like 5 titles. We got Durant, Westbrook, and Harden. Like, are you kidding me? You know, so we'll see. You know, is Garland happy being the second guy? You know, all these things factor into it. So if I'm a Cavs fan, I want to get that first playoff series against the Knicks under my belt.
Yeah, if there's any city, franchise, fan base that is accustomed or is not, you know, jaded to the idea that, our star won't leave us, it is the Cleveland Cavaliers, Cleveland City, the fan base there, because of what they've dealt with LeBron James. So I'll tell you what, I cannot wait for this playoff series. One thing I love about the playoffs, not that I've lived through many playoff series, unfortunately, is that, like, you get to talk a lot about now a different team outside of just the Knicks. Like, the Cavs are a fun team to talk about. Like, I really enjoyed watching them play this year. Donovan Mitchell's been amazing. So it'll be great to pour into this team as well and to learn as much about this team in the next few weeks, see what adjustments they do to the Knicks in these playoffs, and let's see what happens. But I know we'll have plenty of awesome conversations just next week leading up to the series, and then obviously once the series gets going. So Knicks Cavs, that is the first round matchup for the Eastern Conference playoffs in round 1. So we're going to